The crystal towers of Zentara Prime reached toward the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside the largest tower, representatives from 12 different alien species sat in a perfect circle. Their chairs floated above the ground, glowing with soft blue light. The air smelled of ozone and distant flowers. Admiral Vexstar stood in the center of the circle. His blue skin shimmered as he moved his four arms in precise gestures. 3 eyes focused on the holographic display floating before him. The image showed a small blue planet spinning slowly in the darkness of space. "Earth," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "The 3rd planet in the Sol system. Classification, Deathworld Level 12. The representatives shifted in their seats. Some made clicking sounds with their mandibles. Others released puffs of scented gas that meant worry in their culture. Level 12 was the highest danger rating any world could receive. The creatures that live on this world call themselves humans," Vexstar continued. "They have spread to 17 colony worlds in the past 50 years. Our scientists have studied them carefully. The results are disturbing." He waved one hand, and the hologram changed. Now it showed creatures walking upright on 2 legs. They had hair on their heads and wore artificial coverings over their skin. To most of the aliens watching, the humans looked primitive and weak. "These beings evolved in constant danger," Vexstar explained. "Their world tries to kill them every day. Massive storms destroy entire regions. The ground shakes and splits open without warning. Poisonous creatures hunt them. Deadly plants grow everywhere. The very air burns their lungs in many places." "Counselor," Ithara raised one of her tentacles. "Her species came from a world of gentle seas and floating cities. How do they survive such conditions?" "That is exactly the problem," Vexstar replied. "They do not just survive, they adapt. They fight back. They turn everything into a weapon. Our xenobiologists cannot understand how they function." The hologram now showed human anatomy. Vexstar pointed to different parts with a laser pointer. "Look at their design. They have backup systems for almost everything. 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, multiple ways to heal from injury. They can lose large amounts of blood and keep fighting. They can go days without water and weeks without food." The representatives made more worried sounds. This information was new to most of them. "But the physical adaptations are not the worst part," Vexstar said. "It is how they think. When other species face impossible odds, they surrender or flee. Humans become more dangerous. They call it fighting spirit. Our psychologists have no explanation for this behavior." Far away, in a ship floating at the edge of the Sol system, Commander Jake Sullivan read the message that had just arrived. The words appeared on his screen in standard galactic script, but their meaning was clear enough. He sat in his command chair aboard the colony ship New Horizon and read the ultimatum 3 times. The message was simple. Humanity had 1 month to abandon all colonies outside the Sol system. Every human settlement beyond their homeworld must be evacuated. If they refused, the Galactic Council would use military force to remove them. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and steady hands. He had served in the Earth Space Navy for 25 years. He had helped establish 6 of the human colonies that the aliens now wanted abandoned. Families lived on those worlds. Children had been born there who had never seen Earth. "Sir?" Lieutenant Amy Carter stood beside his chair. She was young, maybe 25, with brown hair tied back in a military style. "The communication is from the Galactic Council. They're demanding we withdraw from all our outer settlements." Jake nodded slowly. "I read it. Send a message to Earth Command, Priority 1, and get me Dr. Morgan." Dr. Lisa Morgan arrived in the communications center 10 minutes later. She was a xenobiologist, one of the few humans who had studied alien life forms. Her specialty was understanding how different species thought and behaved. "They're afraid of us," she said after reading the message. "I've been studying their biological reports about humans. They think we're some kind of super predator species. Are we?" Jake asked. Lisa laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Compared to them? Yes. Most galactic species evolved on worlds where the biggest danger was running out of food. They've never faced real predators or natural disasters. To them, we must seem like monsters." Jake looked out the viewports at the stars. "What do they think we'll do? Conquer the galaxy? Maybe," Lisa said. "Their reports focus on human aggression and adaptability. They can't understand why we explore dangerous places or take risks. To them, any species that survived on a world like Earth must be naturally violent." Jake turned to Amy. "What's the status of the other colony ships?" "All 17 colonies have received the same message," Amy reported. "Captain Davis on the Earth Defense Force flagship is requesting orders. He wants to know if we're going to comply." Jake was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the families on New Eden Colony. Children playing in gardens that their parents had planted with seeds from Earth. Farmers growing food in soil they had made fertile through years of hard work. Scientists studying new forms of life that could help all of humanity. "Send a message to all colony ships in Earth Command," Jake said finally. "We will not abandon our settlements. We're not the monsters they think we are, or we won't be pushed around either." Dr. Morgan looked worried. "Jake, they have technology we can barely understand. Their ships are more advanced than ours. If they decide to use force, then we'll deal with that when it happens," Jake replied. "But I won't tell families to abandon their homes because some aliens think we're too dangerous to exist." 3 days later, the response came from Earth. The message was short and clear. Humanity would not comply with the Galactic Council's demands. The colonies would remain. Earth's small but growing space fleet would defend them if necessary. Admiral Vexstar received the human response while standing in his private quarters aboard the flagship Eternal Peace. The ship was massive, nearly 3 kilometers long, with energy shields that could deflect any known weapon. It was one of 300 ships in the advanced fleet heading toward human space. He read the human message and felt something he had never experienced before. The emotion was difficult to identify. Later, he would realize it was the first time he had ever felt true fear. The humans had refused to surrender. They were going to fight. For a species that had never known real war, this was incomprehensible. The Galactic Council had overwhelming superiority in numbers, technology, and firepower. Any rational species would recognize this and submit. But as Vexstar was beginning to understand, humans were not rational by galactic standards. They were something else entirely. Something that made the universe a much more dangerous place than anyone had imagined. The fleet continued toward human space, carrying with it the seeds of a conflict that would change everything. 3 weeks after the ultimatum expired, the alien fleet appeared at the edge of the New Eden system. Admiral Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. 300 ships hung in perfect formation against the black of space. Each vessel gleamed with polished metal and energy fields that shimmered like soap bubbles. "Target acquired," his weapons officer reported. "1 human colony world. Population approximately 2 million. Orbital defenses are minimal." Vexstar nodded. "Open a communication channel to the human settlement. We will give them one final chance to surrender peacefully." The response came faster than expected. A human male appeared on the main screen. He wore a simple blue uniform with insignia that marked him as a colonial administrator. His name was Governor Pete Williams, and he looked tired but determined. "This is New Eden Colony," the human said. "We received your ultimatum. Our answer hasn't changed. This is our home now. We're not leaving. Vexstar was puzzled by the humans' calm tone. Most species would be panicking when faced with such overwhelming force. Governor Williams, you must understand your situation. We have 300 warships. You have 12 orbital platforms and perhaps 30 small fighters. Resistance is pointless. The human smiled, and Vexstar found the expression disturbing. Maybe you're right about the numbers, but you're wrong about one thing. This isn't pointless to us. These are our families, our homes, our lives. We'll fight. For them. The communication ended. Vexstar stared at the blank screen for several seconds. In all his years of military service, he had never encountered such behavior. Rational beings did not choose hopeless battles. Begin the assault, he ordered. Disable their orbital defenses first. Avoid civilian casualties if possible. We want them to surrender, not turn them into martyrs. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat in a cockpit of her fighter, floating in space 2,000 kilometers from New Eden. Around her, 29 other pilots waited for orders. Their ships were small compared to the alien vessels, but they were fast and maneuverable. This is Flight Leader Carter to all pilots, she said into her radio. Remember, we're not trying to win this fight. We're trying to make them pay for every meter of space they take. Make them remember that humans don't give up. The alien ships moved forward in perfect formation. Their energy shields glowed brighter as they prepared for combat. Vexstar expected the human fighters to retreat or attempt some form of negotiation. Instead, they accelerated directly toward his fleet. Foolish, he muttered. They're committing suicide. The first exchange of fire lasted only seconds. Alien plasma beams reached out toward the human fighters, but the small ships were already moving in unpredictable patterns. They rolled and spun through space in ways that seemed random, but somehow avoided most of the incoming fire. 3 human fighters took direct hits and exploded into balls of flame and debris. Amy Carter watched her wingman disappear in a flash of light and felt the familiar cold anger the humans called battle rage. Break formation, she ordered. Attack pattern Delta. Remember what we practiced. The human fighters scattered in all directions, then suddenly converged on a single alien ship. The aliens had expected them to maintain formation and engage in long-range combat. Instead, the humans closed to point-blank range and opened fire with every weapon they had. Chief Engineer Ben Foster had worked for 3 weeks to modify the human weapons. The aliens used energy shields that could deflect directed energy weapons perfectly, but the shields had never been designed to stop solid projectiles. Human railguns fired chunks of metal at tremendous velocity, and the alien shields simply let them pass through. The first alien ship to die was a cruiser carrying 800 crew members. Human missiles punched through its shields and tore apart its hull. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface, a new star that flared bright and then faded. Impossible, Vexstar said. How did they penetrate our shields? His science officer was frantically checking sensor readings. Sir, they're using kinetic weapons, solid projectiles. Our shields weren't designed to stop them. Primitive, Vexstar said, but his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Adjust shield frequencies to block kinetic attacks. But the humans weren't finished. Amy Carter led her remaining fighters in another attack run, this time targeting the shield generators of a battleship. The alien crew expected the fighters to retreat after their first success. Instead, the humans pressed their attack even harder. 2 more fighters died, their pilots choosing to ram damaged ships into alien vessels rather than retreat. The concept was alien to Vexstar's understanding. His species had evolved on a peaceful world where life was precious and death was rare. They could not comprehend beings who would deliberately sacrifice themselves for tactical advantage. "Fall back," Vextar ordered. "Regroup at 10,000 kilometers. We need to reassess the situation." The alien fleet withdrew, leaving the debris of 30 ships floating in space. The humans had lost 18 fighters, but they had proven something important. The mighty Galactic Council fleet could be hurt. On the surface of New Eden, Governor Williams watched the tactical display in the Colonial Command Center. His military advisor, Colonel Roy Davis, stood beside him with a grim expression. "We bloodied their nose," Davis said. "But they'll be back. And next time they'll be ready." "For our tactics," Williams nodded. "How long until the Earth fleet arrives?" 6 days, if they push their engines to the limit. "But sir, even with reinforcements, we're outnumbered 10-1. Williams looked out the window at the city beyond. Children were playing in the parks, unaware that their world had just fought its first space battle. Farmers were tending crops. In the fields, families were having dinner together. "Then we hold for 6 days," Williams said, "however long it takes." Aboard the Eternal Peace, Admiral Vextar reviewed the battle recordings for the 5th time. His tactical computers had analyzed every human maneuver, but the results made no sense according to galactic military doctrine. "They fight like animals," his second-in-command observed. "No discipline, no formation integrity, no concern for casualties." Vextar was beginning to suspect the opposite was true. The humans had shown perfect discipline, just not the kind his species understood. They had executed complex maneuvers under fire and maintained formation integrity even while taking heavy losses. Their concern for casualties was demonstrated by how effectively they had used those losses to achieve tactical goals. "Sir," his communication officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They want a status report." Vextar activated the communication link. The face of Council Chairman Zeph Call appeared on the screen, his expression expectant. "Admiral, we expected the human colony to surrender by now. What is your status?" "The humans are resistant," Vextar replied carefully. "They've rejected all offers of peaceful surrender. We encountered unexpected tactical difficulties during our first engagement." "Difficulties?" The chairman's voice carried a note of incredulity. "You have 300 ships against a primitive colony world. What kind of difficulties?" Vextar hesitated. How could he explain that humans fought with a ferocity that defied all military logic? How could he describe the sight of fighter pilots deliberately ramming their ships into enemy vessels? "The humans employ unconventional tactics," he said finally. "They appear to have no concept of acceptable losses. They fight until their ships are destroyed around them." The chairman was quiet for a moment. "Admiral, you're describing behavior that suggests mental illness on a species-wide scale." "Yes, sir," Vextar agreed. "That appears to be an accurate assessment." But even as he said the words, Vextar wondered if madness was the right explanation. The humans had fought with precision and intelligence. Their tactics had been effective, even brilliant. Perhaps what looked like madness to galactic civilization was actually something else entirely, something that made humans far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The alien fleet regrouped and began planning for the next assault. But for the first time in galactic history, a council fleet had been forced to retreat from a primitive world. The precedent was disturbing, and its implications would soon spread throughout civilized space. Humanity had drawn first blood, and nothing would ever be the same. The news of the defeat at New Eden spread through galactic space like a virus. On Zentara Prime, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. The crystal towers hummed with tension as representatives from 12 species argued in multiple languages. Council. Chairman Zeph Call stood before the assembly, his normally calm demeanor showing cracks of strain. "The humans have rejected our authority," he announced. They have destroyed 30 of our ships and shown no willingness to negotiate. This aggression cannot be tolerated. Fleet Admiral Crixana of the Crystalline Unity rose from her floating chair. Her crystalline body caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns. Chairman, perhaps we underestimated their capabilities. Should we not try diplomatic solutions before escalating further? Diplomacy? Zeph Call's voice carried disbelief. These creatures ran their ships into ours rather than surrender. They fight until they die. There is no reasoning with such beings. Admiral Yulter of the Void Seekers agreed. My analysis confirms the chairman's assessment. Humans display pack-hunting behavior combined with territorial aggression. They are a threat to galactic stability. The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The Council voted unanimously to mobilize the Grand Fleet. 2,000 ships from 3 major powers would converge on human space. The largest military force in galactic history would teach these upstart Deathworlders their place. 6 months later, the Grand Fleet assembled at the edge of human space. Fleet Admiral Zeph Call commanded from his flagship, the Righteous Dawn. The ship was 5 kilometers long and equipped with weapons that could crack planets. Around it, vessels from dozens of worlds formed an armada that blotted out the stars. Target confirmed, his navigation officer reported. Titan Mining Station, Sol System. Population 12,000 humans, mostly civilians. Zeph Call studied the tactical display. Titan was one of humanity's largest industrial facilities, built into the surface of Saturn's moon. It produced materials for human colonies throughout their small territory. Destroying it would cripple human expansion. Open communications. He ordered, let us give them one final chance. The human who appeared on screen was a middle-aged man with graying hair and calloused hands. Colonel Pete Williams wore a mining supervisor's uniform rather than military dress. Behind him, Zeph Call could see industrial equipment and workers moving with calm efficiency. This is Titan Station, Williams said. I'm guessing you're here to blow us up. Zeph Call was taken aback by the human's casual tone. Colonel Williams, I am Fleet Admiral Zeph Call of the Galactic Council. You are surrounded by 2,000 warships. Surrender immediately, and your people will be relocated safely. Williams looked around at his workers, who had stopped to listen to the conversation. Zeph Call saw men and women, young and old, all watching their leader with calm attention. No panic, no fear, just quiet determination. Admiral, these people came here to build something, Williams said. They left families on Earth to mine ice and metal on a frozen moon. They work 16-hour shifts in conditions that would kill most of your species in minutes. You think they're going to give up because you brought some big ships? Colonel, be reasonable. You cannot possibly win this engagement. Williams smiled, and Zeph Call felt the same chill that Admiral Vextar had experienced months earlier. Admiral, you still don't understand humans, do you? We don't fight to win. We fight because it's the right thing to do. The communication ended. Zeph Call stared at the empty screen, trying to process what he had heard. The human had just admitted that victory was impossible, yet he still chose to fight. It made no sense, according to any military doctrine in galactic civilization. Begin the assault, Zeph Call ordered. Disable their defenses, but avoid civilian casualties. We want prisoners, not martyrs. The Grand Fleet moved forward like a metal tide. Energy weapons reached out across space, targeting Titan's orbital platforms and defensive installations. But the humans had learned from the Battle of New Eden. Their defenses were deeper and more clever than EXPETED. Dr. Helen Brooks watched the alien approach from Titan's command center. She was a xenopsychologist, one of the few humans who specialized in understanding alien behavior. Her analysis of Galactic Council psychology had become required reading for human military planners. There, following standard galactic doctrine, she reported to Colonel Williams. Massed formation, overwhelming firepower, minimal acceptable losses. They expect us to surrender when we realize resistance is futile. How long until they realize we don't think like them? Williams asked. About 30 seconds, Brooks replied. First wave of alien ships closed to optimal firing range and opened up with everything they had. Plasma beams and energy pulses lit up the space around Titan like a deadly fireworks display. But instead of the quick collapse they expected, the humans fought back with unexpected creativity. Engineer Kate Murphy had spent months preparing Titan's defenses. The mining station's industrial equipment became weapons of war. Magnetic launchers, designed to move ore containers, now hurled chunks of metal at alien ships. Fusion reactors that powered mining operations were rigged to overload and detonate like bombs. Fire everything, Williams ordered. Titan's surface erupted with activity. Mining charges meant for breaking apart asteroids launched toward the alien. Fleet, ore containers filled with metal fragments, became improvised shotgun shells. Industrial lasers, designed for cutting rock, reached out to slice through alien hulls. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Their ships were designed to fight other warships using standardized weapons and tactics. They had no defense against. Mining equipment turned into artillery. 20 alien ships died in the first exchange, their hulls punctured by chunks of raw iron moving at thousands of kilometers per second. The survivors recoiled in shock, trying to understand how civilians with industrial tools had hurt them so badly. Impossible, Zevkal muttered. They're using mining equipment as weapons. How did our intelligence miss this? His tactical officer was frantically updating threat assessments. Sir, human psychology appears to include the ability to weaponize any available technology. They don't distinguish between military and civilian resources. The battle raged for 6 hours. Waves of alien ships attacked Titan's defenses, only to be met by increasingly creative human responses. When the mining charges ran out, the humans used shipping containers as kinetic weapons. When the containers were gone, they turned the station's structural supports into spears. Engineer Kate Murphy found herself alone in a damaged section of the station when alien boarding parties finally broke through. The aliens expected to find terrified civilians hiding in corners. Instead, they found a woman with a welding torch and the attitude of someone defending her home. The aliens wore environmental suits and carried energy weapons that could vaporize a human instantly. Kate wore work clothes and carried tools meant for repairing machinery. By all military logic, she should have surrendered immediately. Instead, she used her welding torch to cut through their suits, causing explosive decompression that killed 3 aliens in seconds. When more arrived, she rigged a fusion cell to explode and took out an entire boarding party along with herself. Similar scenes played out across Titan Station. Human civilians fought with the same intensity as trained soldiers. They used their intimate knowledge of the station's layout to ambush alien troops. They turned environmental systems into weapons, flooding sections with poisonous gas or superheated steam. The aliens had never encountered such behavior. In their civilization, civilians were protected non-combatants who stayed out of the way during conflicts. The idea that ordinary people would fight to the death was incomprehensible. After 8 hours of combat, Zevkal finally ordered a withdrawal. Titan Station was a smoking ruin, its surface scarred by explosions and its orbital defenses destroyed. But the cost had been horrific. Nearly 300 alien ships had been lost, and thousands of crew members were dead. Status report, Zevkal demanded as his fleet regrouped. Titan Station is neutralized, his tactical officer reported. But sir, we lost 14% of our fleet, destroying a single mining facility. At this rate, ... Zefkal didn't need the calculation completed. At this rate, the humans would destroy his entire fleet before they ran out of targets. The Deathworlders were fighting with a ferocity that no galactic military doctrine had prepared for. Dr. Brooks's final transmission from Titan Station reached Earth just before the station's communication array was destroyed. Her message was brief but clear. The aliens can't understand us. They fight to win quickly with minimal losses. We fight to make them pay for every victory. Use that against them. On Earth, human military planners studied the Battle of Titan with growing understanding. The Galactic Council's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They had never learned to fight a total war against an enemy that refused to surrender, but humans had been fighting such wars for their entire evolutionary history. Against predators, against nature, against each other. They knew how to make victory so expensive that the winner questioned whether it was worth the price. The war was far from over, but the balance was beginning to shift. The aliens had superior technology and numbers, but humans had something more valuable: the willingness to pay. 1 year into the war, both sides had learned terrible lessons about each other. The Galactic Council controlled more space and had won more battles, but every victory came at a cost that shocked their civilian populations. Humans controlled fewer systems, but had turned each one into a fortress that demanded an enormous price to capture. Commander Rick Stone stood on the bridge of the human cruiser Defiance, watching Europa Research Station through the viewports. The ice-covered moon orbited Jupiter in the distance, its surface gleaming white under the system's pale sun. Beneath that ice lay one of humanity's most important scientific facilities. "Sir, long-range sensors detect the alien fleet," reported Lieutenant Amy Carter. She had survived 3 major battles and earned rapid promotion through the simple fact of staying alive when so many others had died. 200 ships, approaching from the outer system. Rick nodded calmly. He was a tall man with steady gray eyes and hands that never seemed to shake, no matter how bad things got. His crew had been fighting continuously for 72 hours, rotating through shifts to keep their ship operational while under constant attack. "Signal the station," he ordered. "Tell them we'll hold as long as possible, but they need to be ready for ground combat." Dr. Lisa Morgan received the message in Europa's main laboratory. She was exhausted from working around the clock to evacuate critical research data, but her mind remained sharp. Around her, scientists and technicians continued their work with the same calm focus that humans showed in every crisis. "How long do we have?" asked Dr. Kate Murphy, who had transferred from Titan Station after surviving that battle. She carried scars from alien energy weapons and moved with a slight limp, but her eyes held the hard gleam of someone who had learned what humans were truly capable of. "Maybe 6 hours before they break through our orbital defenses," Lisa replied. "After that, it's up to us." The alien fleet approached Europa with confidence born from previous victories. Fleet Admiral Zefkal studied the data with growing unease. "Explain." "Sir, human combat effectiveness actually increases under extreme stress. Where our troops suffer degraded performance after 6 hours of combat, humans maintain peak efficiency for days. Their biological systems produce combat enhancement chemicals that our species lack entirely." The science officer continued. "Furthermore, their psychological profile shows an inverse relationship between odds of survival and fighting intensity. The more hopeless their situation becomes, the more dangerous they grow." Zefkal felt something that his species rarely experienced: genuine fear. "Are you saying that humans are biologically designed for warfare?" "Not designed, sir. Evolved. Their homeworld shaped them through millions of years of constant danger. Every human adaptation that seems normal to them appears superhuman to species from peaceful worlds." Admiral Vextar joined the conversation from his own ship. Sir, I've been studying battle recordings from all our engagements. Human crews can function at combat effectiveness levels that would kill most of our personnel. They can lose 30% of their blood and keep fighting. They can go days without sleep and maintain tactical awareness. But most disturbing, Vextar continued, is their emotional response to combat. Where we feel fear and seek to minimize casualties, humans experience what they call battle rage. They become more creative, more aggressive, and more willing to take risks as the fighting intensifies. Zefkal was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. His entire career had been built on the assumption that all intelligent species shared similar psychological frameworks. The idea that an entire civilization might think differently was challenging everything he believed. "What are you recommending?" he asked finally. "Sir," Vextar said carefully, "I believe we may have made a fundamental error in our assessment of humanity. They are not a conquest-oriented species seeking to dominate the galaxy. They are a survival-oriented species that will fight to the death to protect what they consider theirs." The implications were staggering. The Galactic Council had started this war based on fear that humans would become aggressive conquerors. But their response to that fear had turned them into exactly the kind of enemy they had been trying to prevent. On Earth, human military leaders studied the same battle data with very different conclusions. General Steve Parker stood in the Pentagon's war room surrounded by holographic displays showing the current state of the conflict. "The aliens are learning," he said to his staff. "Their tactics are adapting to our strengths. But they still don't understand our fundamental advantage." "Which is?" asked Colonel Roy Davis. "They're fighting to win quickly and efficiently. We're fighting for survival. Those are completely different types of warfare, with completely different rules." Dr. Helen Brooks, the xenopsychologist who had become humanity's expert on alien psychology, nodded in agreement. "The aliens come from peaceful worlds where conflict is resolved through negotiation or brief displays of superior force. They have no concept of total war. But we do," Parker continued. "Humans have been fighting total wars for thousands of years. Against other humans, against nature, against extinction itself. We know how to make victory so expensive that the winner questions whether it was worth the price." The room was quiet as the implications sank in. Humanity was not winning the war in any conventional sense. They were losing territory, ships, and people at an alarming rate. But they were also teaching the galaxy a lesson about the true cost of fighting a Deathworld species. "Sir," Amy Carter spoke up from her position at the tactical display. She had been promoted to major after her heroic actions during the Europa battle. "Long-range reconnaissance shows the alien fleet is withdrawing from the outer colonies. They're consolidating their forces." Parker studied the display. "They're learning that holding human territory requires permanent occupation by overwhelming force. That ties up huge numbers of their ships and troops. Meanwhile," Dr. Brooks added, "their civilian populations are starting to question the war. Galactic species aren't psychologically equipped for extended conflicts with high casualties. Their support for the war effort is eroding." Parker smiled grimly. "Then we're exactly where we want to be. The aliens have superior technology and numbers, but we have something they can't match: the willingness to make this war so expensive that they'll eventually decide we're not worth the trouble." Back in alien space, Fleet Admiral Zefkal received new orders from the Galactic Council. The message was brief and to the point: find a way to end the human conflict quickly, or face replacement by commanders who could. But as Zefkal looked out at the stars, he wondered if such commanders actually existed. The humans had taught the galaxy a harsh lesson about the difference between civilized warfare and survival fighting. For the first time in galactic history, A primitive species had forced the Council to question whether some enemies might be too dangerous to fight, regardless of technological superiority. The war was entering a new phase, and nobody knew how it would end. Cole had refined his tactics based on hard-won experience. Massed bombardment followed by overwhelming assault had eventually succeeded at every human facility they had attacked. But Admiral Vextar, now serving as Zefkal's tactical advisor, felt a growing unease as he studied the human defenses. "Sir, they're not deploying according to any pattern we've seen before. Their ship positions seem almost random." "Explain," Zefkal demanded. "The humans usually concentrate their forces to maximize defensive firepower. Here, they're spread across the entire moon's orbital space. It makes no tactical sense." Zefkal studied the display. Vextar was correct. 30 human ships were scattered around Europa in what appeared to be a completely disorganized formation. Perhaps they're finally showing the strain of continuous combat. Begin the assault. The first wave of alien ships moved forward and immediately discovered why the humans had changed their tactics. Instead of fighting a conventional battle, the human ships began a running engagement that lasted for 3 full days. Commander Rick Stone led his ship in wide circles around Europa, never staying in one place long enough for the aliens to concentrate. Fire on him. When alien ships pursued, human vessels led them through carefully prepared killing zones. When the aliens tried to ignore them and attack the station directly, the humans would strike at their flanks and rear. "Sir, we've been fighting continuously for 72 hours, Amy Carter reported. "The crew is operating on stimulants and willpower. Most of the other ships are in similar condition." Rick looked around his bridge. His officers stood at their stations with red-rimmed eyes and shaking hands, but their voices remained steady. And their actions precise? They were beyond exhaustion, running on something deeper than physical endurance. "Amy, in your professional opinion, how much longer can we maintain combat operations?" She considered the question seriously. "Maybe another day, sir. Maybe 2 if we're lucky." "And the aliens?" Amy checked her tactical display. The alien fleet had been rotating ships in and out of combat, trying to maintain fresh crews. But even their reserves were showing signs of straying. "They're starting to make mistakes, sir. Their formation discipline is breaking down." Rick smiled grimly. "Then we're winning." The concept would have been impossible for the aliens to understand. Humans were out. 2 years into the war, everything changed when humanity received an unexpected message. The transmission came from the Paraxis system, home to a species the Galactic Council had classified as primitives unsuitable for civilized contact. General. Steve Parker read the message in his command center on Earth. The words were translated from a language that sounded like controlled explosions, but their meaning was clear enough. "Greetings, fellow Deathworlders. We are the Saurians of Paraxis. We have watched your war with great interest. We offer alliance against the soft-world oppressors." Parker looked at Dr. Helen Brooks, who was studying the message with fascination. "Doctor, what do you know about these saurians?" "Reptilian species from a volcanic world," Brooks replied. "The Council classified them as too aggressive for membership about 50 years ago. Apparently, they solve disputes through ritual combat and consider pain tolerance a virtue." "Sounds like our kind of people," Parker said dryly. "What about their technology?" "Limited data, but they appear to have developed weapons and armor specifically designed for high-temperature environments. Their ships are built to withstand solar flares and volcanic eruptions." Within days, a second message arrived, this one from an even more surprising source. The Xerian system had been quarantined by the Council for over a century, its crystalline inhabitants deemed psychologically incompatible with galactic civilization. The message from the Xerians was brief: unity in purpose, alliance in survival. The soft ones fear what they cannot understand. Dr. Brooks worked frantically to understand these new potential allies. The Xerians evolved on a world bathed in radiation that would kill most galactic species in hours. They're silicon-based life forms who actually require high radiation levels to function properly. Their technology, Parker asked, completely unique. They've developed crystalline computers and weapons that channel radiation as energy. Their ships don't need shielding because the crews can survive in hard vacuum. Parker made his decision quickly. Send messages to both species. Propose a meeting at the asteroid belt. If we're going to be the galaxy's monsters, we might as well work together. 3 weeks later, representatives from 3 Deathworlds met in space for the first time. The location was a mining asteroid that humans had been using as a supply depot. It seemed appropriate that the alliance would be forged in a place where humans carved resources from lifeless rock. General Parker commanded the human delegation from the cruiser Resilience. Beside him stood Ambassador Alex Turner, a diplomat who had spent his career trying to prevent exactly this kind of war. The irony was not lost on either of them. The Saurian ship arrived first, an angular vessel that looked more like a weapon than a transport. Its hull glowed with internal heat, and energy readings showed it was running much hotter than any human ship could survive. War Leader Krexstar materialized on the human ship's bridge, holographic projection. He stood 3 meters tall on powerful legs with dark scales that seemed to absorb light. His eyes were yellow and unblinking, and when he spoke, small puffs of smoke escaped from his nostrils. Humans, he said in a voice like grinding stone, we have watched you fight the soft ones. You understand the way of strength. Parker nodded respectfully. War Leader, we fight for survival. If that is strength, then yes, we understand it. Good. The hegemony tried to conquer Paraxis once. We showed them that some worlds bite back. They declared us too violent for civilization and left us alone. The Xerian ship arrived silently, its crystalline hull refracting starlight into rainbow patterns. When Crystal Singer Vashtel appeared on the bridge, the humans were surprised by their appearance. The Xerian was humanoid, but seemed to be made of living crystal, with light pulsing through their translucent body. Greetings, carbon-based allies, Vashtel said in a voice like wind chimes. We offer our knowledge in the fight against the Soft-Worlders. Ambassador, Turner stepped forward. We welcome both of you. But before we discuss alliance, we need to understand what each of us brings to this partnership. Over the next several hours, the 3 species shared information about their capabilities and the challenges they faced. The conversation revealed how similar their situations really were. The Council fears us because we are different, Krexstar explained. They cannot understand beings who embrace conflict and hardship. To them, we are monsters. Vashtel's crystalline body flickered with agreement. Our world is bathed in radiation that creates constant mutation and change. We adapted by becoming mutable ourselves. The Council calls this genetic instability and considers us a contamination risk. Parker saw the pattern clearly. They're not just afraid of individual species. They're afraid of the concept of Deathworlds themselves. We represent everything their peaceful civilization has tried to avoid. The alliance was formalized with surprising speed. The 3 species had more in common than their differences. All had been rejected by galactic civilization. All had adapted to harsh conditions that would kill civilized beings. All had been marked for conquest or containment. The first joint operation took place at the Kepler colony, a human settlement that the aliens had been besieging for months. When the combined Deathworld fleet arrived, the Galactic Council forces found themselves facing an enemy unlike anything in their military experience. Colonel Roy Davis commanded the human contingent from his flagship Determination. Beside him flew Saurian ships that could ram through energy shields without taking damage, their hulls designed to withstand volcanic eruptions. Zarian vessels moved through space like living things, their crystal hulls channeling radiation into devastating beam weapons. "This is Admiral Vextar to all Council ships," came the familiar voice over the communication channel. "You are facing a combined Deathworld fleet. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic conventions." The response came from War Leader Krekstar, Soft-World Admiral. "There are no conventions in survival warfare. You started this fight. We will finish it." The battle that followed became known as the Deathworld demonstration. 3 species working together proved unstoppable against enemies who had never learned to fight total war. Not human ships used their proven tactics of kinetic weapons and ramming attacks. Saurian vessels closed to point-blank range and used thermal weapons that turned enemy hulls into molten slag. Zarian ships moved through the battle like ghosts, their radiation weapons ignoring energy shields completely. But the most devastating weapon was coordination between species that understood each other's fighting spirit. When human ships were damaged, Saurian vessels provided cover. When Saurian ships overheated, Zarian vessels drew fire away from them. When Zarian ships needed time to recharge, human fighters provided distraction. The Council fleet broke and ran after losing 60 ships in 2 hours. For the first time in the war, aliens retreated in complete disorder, their formations shattered by an enemy they could not understand or predict. Admiral Vextar's final transmission was heard throughout galactic space. "The Deathworlders have formed an alliance. May the ancestors help us all." News of the Deathworld alliance spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On dozens of worlds, civilian populations who had supported the war began demanding answers from their leaders. The conflict that was supposed to be a quick police action had become a prolonged nightmare with no end in sight. On Zentara Prime, the Galactic Council met in emergency session once again. But this time, the mood was very different. Council Chairman Zeph Call looked older and more tired than when the war had begun. "The military situation is unsustainable," he announced to the Assembly. "Our casualties exceed replacement rates. Our civilian populations are questioning the necessity of this conflict. And now we face not one Deathworld species, but 3, working in coordination." Councillor Yuthara raised a tentacle hesitantly. "Chairman, perhaps it is time to consider that our initial assessment was incorrect. These species do not appear to seek conquest. They simply want to be left alone. Left alone to spread their violent culture throughout the galaxy," objected Admiral Yulter. "They are a contamination that threatens everything we have built." But even as he spoke the words, Yulter seemed less certain than before. The war had shown that Deathworld species were not mindless aggressors. They fought defensively, with clear goals and reasonable tactics. Their violence was directed and purposeful, not random destruction. Dr. Nancy Clark had spent 2 years studying Deathworld psychology for the Council. Her report was delivered to the emergency session by holographic transmission from her research. "Station. Honored Council members," she began. "My analysis suggests that Deathworld species are not aberrations to be feared, but necessary diversity in galactic evolution. Their unique adaptations and perspectives make them invaluable for exploring dangerous regions of space and solving problems that peaceful worlds cannot imagine." The silence that followed was profound. Dr. Clark was suggesting that the galaxy needed Deathworlders, not in spite of their dangerous qualities, but because of them. "Consider," she continued, "that these species have technologies and capabilities that our civilization lacks. Human endurance, Saurian thermal resistance, Zarian radiation immunity. These traits could help us explore neutron stars, gas giant atmospheres, and the galactic core itself." Ambassador A.